Picture a grand ballroom in the heart of Beverly Hills, shimmering chandeliers, casting light across a sea of glamorous guests. A stunning woman in a designer white gown stands at the altar, her bouquet trembling in her grasp as she stares into the eyes of the wildly wealthy groom. The crowd holds its breath. The final vow, a simple, "I do," is all that remains. But suddenly, the doors swing open with a crash. In strides a heavily pregnant woman, flanked by identical triplets and a fleet of stern-faced lawyers. Whispers transform into gasps. This, my friends, is the moment our story truly begins. Veronica Castle had arrived at Los Angeles International Airport with nothing but 2 suitcases and an unquenchable desire for a glamorous life. At 28, she was neither childlike nor naive. She understood what she wanted and was prepared to do whatever it took. She had grown up in a quiet Philadelphia suburb, dreaming of the California sunshine and the sparkle of Beverly Hills. When her flight touched down, the July heat greeted her with a burst of hot air. The entire city spread out beneath a honey-gold sunset, as though beckoning her toward endless possibilities. It wasn't long before she landed a waitressing job at Spargo on North Cannon Drive. It was one of those storied places where Hollywood's elite wined and dined, expensive champagne popped nightly, and the chatter of million-dollar deals filled the air. She'd served the tables with unwavering grace, carefully balancing trays of caviar and lobster bisque as though her entire life depended on it. But Veronica's heart beat faster whenever someone important strolled in producers, in pressed suits, socialites, in designer gowns. She memorized their preferences and studied their mannerisms. She yearned for a chance to climb the ladder. She was not content to remain behind a tray. By chance or fate, she caught the eye of Edward Rothman, a reclusive millionaire rumored to be worth over $500 million. Edward had once been front-page news for launching an innovative biotech company, Rothman Medical Sciences, rumored to be revolutionizing cancer research. He was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with a quiet, authoritative calm that contrasted sharply with the flashy showbiz types who normally paraded through Spargo. Edward was divorced, or so Veronica heard. She learned that from her colleague in the kitchen who had gleaned tidbits from local gossip columns. His rumored divorce was hush-hush, though. From day one, Veronica had a mantra: if an opportunity presents itself, I will take it. So she put on her best smile, gave Edward first-class service, and made sure to slip him her phone number on the receipt. 3 days later, Veronica left the tiny guest house she'd been renting near Fairfax Avenue to meet Edward for a quiet dinner at the Peninsula Beverly Hills. He had arranged a private table. They drank vintage Dom Perignon and talked of art travel and charity galas. She feigned a knowledge of fine wines and spoke with an elegance she had carefully honed while reading glossy magazines. By the dessert course, Edward was entranced. As the weeks turned into months, Edward's aloofness thawed. He flew Veronica to New York for a weekend of shopping on Fifth Avenue. They stayed in the penthouse suite at the Plaza. He introduced her to some of his business associates, lawyers, bankers, venture capitalists. She realized she was crossing into a whole new realm of wealth and influence. More than once, she had to pinch herself. Yet behind Edward's polished smile and supportive gentlemanly gestures, there were mysteries he never fully explained. He never gave details about his prior marriage. She'd occasionally see the corner of a photograph peeking out from the top drawer in his office desk. If she asked about it, he'd casually change the subject. Every so often, he received phone calls late at night, which he'd take in a private room. He'd come back looking anxious, but he'd brush off her concern with "it's a business matter, nothing serious." Veronica convinced herself it was part and parcel of dating a man with so many responsibilities. Besides, the gifts, the glamorous trips, and his quiet devotion soothed all doubts in her mind. By their 6-month anniversary, Edward surprised her with a diamond tennis bracelet worth a small fortune. When he whisked her away to the Amalfi Coast for a romantic getaway, Veronica felt certain she'd snagged her future wealth, love, and security all wrapped into one. 14 months into their relationship, Edward officially proposed. It happened during a private dinner at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel's rooftop, overlooking the entire city, sparkling at night. He pressed a 6-carat, cushion-cut diamond ring onto Veronica's trembling finger. She said yes, without hesitation. It was a dream. She had silently prayed for the ring, the vow, the entrance into a world far removed from her modest upbringing. Veronica's circle at Spago exploded with gossip. Some cheered for her success, while others cast sly looks. There were whispers that Edward was not entirely free. She tried to ignore the malicious rumors that he was still married in a legal sense. But truthfully, she never saw final divorce papers. He insisted that it was a done deal, that only a few legal technicalities lingered, that he was absolutely single from a practical standpoint. The ring on her finger quieted her anxieties. She'd soon be Mrs. Veronica Rothman, a name that sounded like a new identity, a phoenix rising from her mundane past. A few months before the wedding, the rumors intensified. A co-worker, Lola Santos, whom Veronica always suspected of jealousy, whispered that she heard from the bar manager that Edward's ex-wife was not truly an ex. Allegedly, the pair were still embroiled in complicated estate negotiations. Lola hinted that Edward's wife, Angela Rothman, had retreated from public life because of a private pregnancy. None of it made sense to Veronica. Surely not. She confronted Edward, who again reassured her. He'd wave his hand dismissively and say, "Nonsense. Angela and I separated years ago. She's not pregnant. She's living in Europe. Please trust me, love." And Veronica did. She wanted to. The wedding was swiftly approaching, and she had a million details to orchestrate the venue, the caterers, the decorations. Edward employed a top-tier wedding planner, Penelope Voss, whose services were rumored to start at $300,000. The wedding was to be held at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The Grand Ballroom booked the date set for a bright Saturday in May. Invitations went out to Edward's powerful friends, attorneys from the prestigious firm, Friedman and Parker, top executives from Rothman Medical Sciences, philanthropic celebrities, and a few real estate moguls. Veronica, for her part, invited some old acquaintances from Philadelphia and her new circle from Spago. Penelope Vaughan assured her that everything would be perfect. Veronica was determined to wear a dazzling white gown, a symbol of the fresh start she believed they were both making. If some people viewed her as just the mistress turned fiancée, so be it. She wanted the elegance of tradition. The morning sun lit up Beverly Hills with a vivid golden glow as Veronica prepped in her lavish suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Stylists from José Hébert Salon fussed over her hair, pinned it into an elegant updo, while a personal makeup artist from Paris dabbed on finishing touches. Her gown, custom-made by Vera Wang, hung on a velvet hanger, a piece of art in white silk and delicate lace. 10,000 roses had been ordered. Soft music drifted through the corridors, and servers prepared trays of champagne. For Veronica, it was nothing short of a fairy tale. Her mother had flown in from Philadelphia, tearful and proud, though perplexed by the sheer magnitude of the event. Her father, who had long since grown distant, didn't attend. Busy, he'd said. Veronica's heart twinged at the absence, but she pushed it away. Her future was all that mattered now. Edward's best friend, Terence Hayes, a tech entrepreneur, roamed the lobby greeting guests. Everything was on schedule. In a distant suite, Edward was presumably with his groomsman, sipping 25-year Macallan. By noon, the florist finished adorning the ballroom with lush hydrangeas, orchids, and lilies. Tension, excitement, and a spark of possibility crackled through the air. Veronica stepped into her dress, a wave of euphoria washing over her. She had spent months ignoring gossip and trusting Edward's every assurance. This was their day, she told herself. Nothing will go wrong. The ballroom was a vision gold filigree, gilded arches, soft pastel flowers, and a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. Rows of seats were filled with tuxedoed men and elegant women in diamonds. Cameras flashed. Veronica walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, a hush falling over the room as she approached the altar. Edward, handsome, in a tailored Armani suit, gazed at her with a quiet intensity. The officiant judge, William Farnsworth, a retired federal judge and longtime family friend of Edward's, stood ready. Veronica's heart pounded. She passed a glance over the crowd, so many powerful figures, so many watchful eyes. Anxiety nipped at the edges of her excitement. But the hush was too sweet. The swirl of her train as she reached Edward felt like the final step of a long journey. They clasped hands. The officiant began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Suddenly, the double doors at the far end of the ballroom slammed open. The string quartet faltered. Murmurs rippled through the assembled guests. Veronica's mother stood up alarmed. The tall figure of a visibly pregnant woman stepped in, wearing a sleek black maternity dress that hugged her pronounced belly. Flanking her were three young children, identical triplet boys, no more than 7 years old, dressed in matching suits. Behind them marched a team of lawyers in dark suits, bearing manila folders and intense expressions. The pregnant woman's face was statuesque, bearing a fierce, quiet fury. As she drew closer, some guests recognized her, Angela Rothman, Edward's wife. Not ex, not a footnote, but a living, breathing presence. Veronica felt her grip on Edward's hand turn to ice. Her stomach churned so violently that she feared she might faint. Edward's eyes widened, his face turning ashen. He glanced around, his composure slipping for the first time in Veronica's memory. Judge Farnsworth froze. A hush fell over the crowd, so profound that even the distant hum of the air conditioning was audible. Angela came to a stop, halfway up the aisle, her triplets forming a protective phalanx in front of her. One of the lawyers stepped forward, nodding to Edward. "Mr. Rothman, we advised you to postpone this event. Since you did not comply, we're here to deliver the legal notice." A stunned whisper ran through the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly. Veronica could barely breathe. Her mind swirled in confusion and betrayal. "He's still married. She's pregnant. He has triplets." Angela cleared her throat, her voice resonating across the hall. "Edward, I told you I was coming for you if you tried to finalize this wedding. You told me you'd handle the situation. Fine, I'm here to handle it myself." In the front row, a couple of Edward's business associates looked at each other, uncertain whether to stand or remain seated. The tension was suffocating. Edward locked eyes with Angela, silent. Veronica felt her heart pounding behind her ribs, terror thrumming in her veins. She wanted to flee, yet her feet were anchored to the plush carpet. Chaos broke out. Guests began talking, some even trying to sneak away, as though afraid of being caught in the crossfire. Edward tried to maintain composure. He turned to the officiant, voice taut. "Let's proceed. Whatever legal matters exist, we'll handle them. Let's not cause a scene." But Angela's lawyer stepped forward and brandished a court document. "I have here an injunction preventing any new marriage on behalf of Edward Joseph Rothman until his existing marriage's legal dissolution is finalized. In other words, if you proceed, the bride will be entering an illegal union with a bigamist." A shocked gasp escaped from Veronica's lips. She felt dizzy, the edges of her vision blurring. Was this a nightmare? Angela, stoic as marble, placed her hand on her pregnant belly, her expression a storm of betrayal. "Those are our children," she gestured to the triplets. "Yes, they're older, but I'm also carrying his new baby. We never divorced Edward. We separated. We tried to mediate, and you did everything to keep me away from the spotlight. But you can't hide your obligations forever. Our settlement is incomplete. Your lawyers know it. You dare to stand here and pretend you're free to marry Veronica's mother?" Rushed up the aisle, grabbing her daughter's arm. "Oh dear God! Veronica, what is going on?" The bride couldn't answer, her throat seized. A swirl of humiliating revelations crashed over her. Edward had misled her the entire time. He had a wife, never truly an ex, still pregnant with his child. He had children, triplets, no less, who looked on with confused stares, and the entire wedding was being halted by a legal team. Edward growled at Angela. "Why are you doing this now? We could have resolved things quietly." Angela shook her head. "Quietly? While you marry the woman who replaced me behind my back. Did you think I'd just vanish? I gave you a chance to finalize the separation and respect me. Instead, you're humiliating me in front of the entire city." The hush in the audience shattered as voices erupted. A wave of tension rippled through the rows of seats. Friedman and Parker attorneys, those who had come as guests on Edward's side, stepped forward to confront Angela's lawyers. They all wore grim, tight expressions, murmuring legal jargon, brandishing phone calls to judges, brandishing documents that contradicted Angela's claims. Judge Farnsworth sighed deeply. "Let's move this discussion outside," he said, attempting to restore decorum. But no one budged. Cameras continued clicking, capturing the meltdown for posterity. Veronica's fury finally overcame her shock. She rounded on Edward, her voice shaking. "You lied to me. You lied to me about everything. Your divorce, your kids, everything." Edward tried to reach out, but she stepped back, a tear streaking down her cheek. "Don't touch me." She was furious, wounded, humiliated before hundreds of people. Angela advanced further, up the aisle, flanked by her triplets. "You see, Veronica, this man is a master of illusions, the father of my children. We were never properly divorced, and to top it off, she placed her hand on her baby bump. We have a new addition on the way. So if he told you I was living in Europe, that was half-truth. I was in Switzerland for a private medical procedure, but I returned months ago trying to settle our marriage with dignity." He refused. Tears blinded Veronica. Edward's secrets spread out like broken glass at her feet, slicing at every tender place in her heart. The officiant cleared his throat. "In light of these circumstances, I cannot proceed with the ceremony. This is a legal matter that must be resolved." Veronica's mother took her trembling hand. The hush of heartbreak and betrayal stung like acid. The final blow came when Angela, motioning to one of her lawyers, said, "Serve her too." Another set of documents landed in Veronica's hands, threatening a lawsuit if she proceeded with a knowingly bigamous ceremony. With that, the bride's dream day shattered, and all that remained was heartbreak scandal and the swirling chaos of lawsuits. After the colossal scene in the grand ballroom, half the guests rushed to the lobby in a flurry of chatter. Some tried to discreetly hide behind columns to avoid paparazzi that had caught wind of the spectacle. Veronica Tears, staining her pristine white gown, retreated to a small side room with her mother and a handful of loyal friends. She felt numb, as though she'd tumbled out of an airplane without a parachute. The wedding had not simply been ruined, it had detonated in front of every powerful contact Edward had. She dreaded the avalanche of social media posts and tabloid headlines. If the paparazzi caught wind, tomorrow's papers would read, "Wedding shocker Mistress in white wife in the wings." Meanwhile, Edward was in a separate conference room with Friedman and Parker attorneys. Angela and her team, led by a formidable female attorney named Sarah Whitfield, occupied the next room, separated by only a frosted glass wall. They glared at each other through the glass. The hush of angry negotiations trickled through the corridor. At one point, Terence Hayes knocked on Veronica's door to offer some half-hearted comfort. "I'm so sorry. Edward," he said, "the legal divorce was nearly done. I had no idea Angela was pregnant again." "You have to believe me." Veronica merely shook her head. Terence sighed and left. Eventually, Edward came looking as though he had aged 10 years. He approached Veronica with desperation. "Please, let me explain." She squared her shoulders, tears still clinging to her eyelashes, but anger stiffening her spine. "Go ahead," she said coldly. Edward let out a trembling exhale. "Angela and I separated 2 years ago. We agreed to divorce. But due to the complexities of dividing assets, we never formally signed the papers. She refused to compromise. She found out about us, but I tried to keep it quiet. She threatened to sabotage me, so I had to ensure she wouldn't come after my company. I wanted to finalize the divorce discreetly, but I didn't expect her to be pregnant again." Veronica's eyes flared. "You're telling me you didn't know your own wife was pregnant? How is that possible? What about these 3 children you never mentioned?" She pointed, referencing the triplets. Edward wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. They were living with her family in Switzerland for specialized schooling. I thought it was just a separation. Then we had one final meeting in Zurich to talk about custody. We had an intimate moment. It was foolish. The pregnancy was a shock. She told me a few months ago, but I was so sure I could handle it quietly that it wouldn't change things. I love you, Veronica. I intended to marry you. I didn't want to lose you. Her face burned with betrayal. Oh, so you decided to lie to me, let me plan this entire wedding while you had a pregnant wife waiting in the wings. That's monstrous. He tried to take her hand. She pulled away. Don't she, hissed voice, cracking with heartbreak. I devoted 1.5 years of my life to you. I believed you. And you turned me into a laughingstock in front of LA's elite. Do you realize how humiliating this is? Edward looked anguished. I'm sorry, Veronica. I was trying to protect everyone. She let out a bitter laugh, tears rolling. Protect yourself, you mean? She stormed out, nearly tripping on the train of her wedding gown, ignoring the stares of curious onlookers. Her mother hurried after her, scolding Edward with a glare that could melt steel. The wedding was over, but the drama was just beginning. In the days that followed, Beverly Hills buzzed with the gossip. Paparazzi staked out Veronica's small condo in West Hollywood. She had moved out of Edward's mansion, immediately hoping for a shot of the jilted almost bride. Tabloids sensationalized the story, printing headlines like "Baby Bump Bombshell," "At the Altar," and "Millionaire Bigamist, the Veronica Castle Scandal." Angela's lawyers filed suit, against Edward for breach of spousal obligations and emotional damages. Edward's legal team filed a countersuit alleging blackmail. Friedman and Parker, led by senior partner Matthew Friedman, scrambled to salvage Edward's reputation, seeing as his biotech company's stock plummeted after negative headlines. The board of directors demanded an emergency meeting, horrified by the fiasco. Veronica, meanwhile, sat in her living room, the shades drawn. She felt paralyzed with heartbreak and shame. She had returned the diamond ring, though Edward insisted she keep it. It sat on her coffee table, a silent reminder of her shattered dreams. She recalled every red flag that she had dismissed, the late-night calls, the guarded expressions, the hush-hush references to estate divisions. She had been so blinded by her desire for a fairy tale ending that she ignored her intuition. Lola Santos, her old co-worker from Spargo, called. Veronica almost didn't answer, but she needed someone to talk to. Lola confessed that she'd tried to warn her, albeit cryptically. "Veronica, I'm sorry. I suspected something was fishy because I used to date a man who worked for Friedman and Parker. He told me Edward's divorce was never final. I should have been clearer." Veronica sighed, tears threatening to fall again. "It's not your fault. I refuse to believe anything but the fantasy Edward spun. Her mother urged her to see a lawyer of her own. He deceived you. You invested money and time into a wedding. There might be recourse." Veronica wasn't sure. She felt too drained to wade into another legal battle, but she did contact a reputable attorney, Christopher Jenkins from Jenkins & Associates, to explore her options. In the hush of Jenkins's office, she explained the entire fiasco. Jenkins tapped his pen on a legal pad. "There's a possibility of a breach of promise lawsuit, or at least a settlement for the money you spent on the wedding. But that's a messy route. More likely, Edward will want to pay you off quietly to avoid further publicity." The mere suggestion made Veronica's skin crawl. Was she to become just another hush money case? She left the meeting with a heavy heart. The illusions of romance and true love had crumbled, replaced by cold legal jargon and potential hush funds. Across town, Angela's pregnancy was the talk of the tabloids. Some claimed she was faking it. Others insisted she was nearly due. Paparazzi photographs showed her leaving Cedars-Sinai for prenatal appointments. The triplets, who had rarely been photographed, were suddenly in the public eye. Angela seemed to be mounting a campaign against Edward, granting subtle hints to entertainment outlets that more secrets were yet to be revealed. Edward himself laid low at his estate in Bel Air, shielded by private security. Friedman and Parker attorneys huddled with him daily, trying to manage the damage. The biotech board was furious. Rumors swirled about forcing Edward to step down as CEO until the scandal settled. Some philanthropic organizations returned Edward's donations, not wanting to be tainted by the fiasco. In the midst of this swirl, Veronica received a text from Edward. "I miss you. Let me see you. We need to talk." She stared at her phone for a long time. Anger and love wrestled in her chest. Finally, she replied, "We have nothing to talk about." Yet the next day, she found herself driving to their old spot, Griffith Observatory, where they used to watch the city lights. "Why am I doing this?" she asked herself. She wore oversized sunglasses, hoping no one would recognize her. He was there, leaning against a railing, looking out at the hazy sprawl of Los Angeles. The tension between them was palpable. "I know you hate me," Edward began, "but I wanted you to hear it from me. I never meant to hurt you. I thought Angela and I would finalize the divorce, that it would be done quietly. I found out about her pregnancy after I proposed to you, and I freaked out. I thought if I told you, you'd leave me. I was selfish. Veronica turned away, tears slipping down beneath her sunglasses. You used me. You let me believe a lie. Edward gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't move away this time. I did love you. I still do. I was just terrified. Angela's father is extremely powerful in Europe money connections, and she threatened to destroy my company if I left her with less than she demanded. Veronica's jaw clenched. Money. It always comes down to money. He sighed. I want you to know, if you choose to walk away, I understand. But if you can just wait until after my child is born and the settlement is done, I promise I'll do whatever it takes to win you back. She let out a bitter laugh. You want me to wait around while your wife has your baby? Do you realize how insane that sounds? You want me to watch from the sidelines like some loyal mistress? He looked pained, but nodded. Yes, I know it's insane. I'm begging you to give me time. I can't just abandon a pregnant woman, especially the mother of my children. But I also don't want to lose you forever. Veronica recoiled. That's not love. That's you wanting it all, your children, your fortune, and me. She stormed off, leaving Edward leaning against the railing, staring after her with anguish carved into his face. As summer wore on, Angela's due date approached. Word on the street was that her father had offered to bankroll a vicious legal fight against Edward. Friedman and Parker quietly reached out to Christopher Jenkins, hinting at a settlement that would cover Veronica's wedding expenses. Jenkins relayed the offer to Veronica. She refused. I don't want hush money. I just want out of this nightmare. But Angela had other plans. One afternoon, Veronica found an elegantly handwritten note slipped under her door. It read, Veronica, we should talk, woman to woman. Name the time and place, signed Angela. Veronica's heart hammered. Curiosity burned. She called Angela's assistant, whose number was included, and arranged to meet at the Bel Air Tea House, a quiet, upscale cafe, discreetly tucked away in lush gardens. She arrived wearing a simple black dress, arms folded tight. Angela, 8 months pregnant, was seated at a corner table, sipping water with lemon. For a moment, Veronica felt a wave of pity. Angela's face was pale. Her belly distended, a visible weight pressing on her. But Angela's eyes shone with steely resolve. Thank you for coming, she said calmly. Veronica took a seat, hands trembling. What do you want from me? Angela sighed, tapping slender fingers on the table. Edward may have told you that I threatened him. But he never told you the full story. When we separated, he insisted we keep it quiet so the stock price wouldn't drop. He promised me a certain settlement amount. Then he reneged. He tried to paint me as a gold digger. So yes, I've been fighting him tooth and nail. She paused, looking sorrowful. He may love you, Veronica, but he loves power more. Don't let his smooth words fool you. Veronica resisted the urge to lash out. If he's so power-obsessed, why do you want him back? Why are you carrying his child? Angela gave a small, humorless smile. I don't want him back romantically, but I do want him to own the mess he created. These triplets of ours, he sees them as chess pieces, part of his image. Now, I'm having another baby, and I have to protect myself. The baby changes everything. As for you, I want you to see the truth. Edward's not an honest man. He's cunning. He'll promise you the moon and stars, but behind closed doors, he's always playing angles. He wants me to sign a hush-hush settlement, but the second I sign, he'll marry you. Meanwhile, you'll spend your life forever overshadowed by the family he already has. Veronica's throat tightened. She hated how plausible Angela's words sounded. Angela continued, I don't say this to hurt you, I know firsthand how charming Edward can be. But ask yourself, do you want to be second place in his empire? Because that's what you'll be. And these children, she gestured to her belly, will always be part of his life. Is that the life you dreamed of? Veronica swallowed the knot in her throat. She parted her lips to speak, but only a whisper emerged. You humiliated me at the wedding, in front of everyone. Angela's expression hardened. I did what I had to do. Edward left me no choice. He planned to marry you in secret, ignoring me, ignoring his unborn child. My father advised me to disrupt the wedding before it was too late. Sometimes you have to draw a line. Veronica looked away, tears brimming. So, what do you want from me exactly? Angela's voice softened. I came to say that if you pursue Edward, know that I will fight for what is mine. I'll ensure the divorce settlement cripples him financially if he tries to shortchange me. If you stay with him, expect him to be locked in a perpetual legal war with me over the children. You'll never have peace. You'll be fighting a mother's anger. And trust me, that's not something you want to face. But if you walk away, there might be peace. The choice is yours. Veronica's heart hammered. She felt cornered, torn between love and self-preservation. Angela took a final sip of water and stood. Don't make my mistake, she said gently. Don't let him ruin your life too. Then Angela left, leaving Veronica trembling at the table, tears streaming down her face. Word spread that Edward had offered Angela a massive settlement, rumored to be in the tens of millions, but Angela refused, demanding a larger share of Rothman Medical Sciences stock. Friedman and Parker tried to spin this as greed, but Angela's team insisted it was about ensuring her children's future. The tension soared. Edward reached out again to Veronica, begging for a second chance. He inundated her with flowers, letters, even tearful voice messages. She listened to them, alone in her apartment, feeling her heart tug. Despite everything, she had loved him deeply. She missed his warmth, the late-night conversations, the sense of belonging in a high-stakes world. But the betrayal was too raw. Christopher Jenkins counseled her, if you want to move on with your life, we can finalize a settlement that compensates you for your wedding expenses and emotional damages. Otherwise, if you want an ongoing relationship with Edward, be prepared for legal complexities. Angela's pregnant, so child custody will be a long, bitter fight. Veronica felt stuck. She found herself lying awake at night, replaying the moment the doors burst open, in the ballroom, the shock on the guests' faces, the heartbreak. Some nights she ached to run back to Edward. Other nights she wanted to see him crash and burn for what he'd put her through. Late August arrived sweltering. Angela went into labor at Cedars-Sinai once again, attracting the paparazzi. Edward rushed there, cameras snapping as he entered. Friedman and Parker attorneys tried to shield him, but the headlines reported every detail Edward Rothman spotted at wife's hospital bedside. Will the mistress return? By the next day, Angela had given birth to a healthy baby girl. A swirl of conflicting emotions filled Edward. He texted Veronica, "It's a girl. I'm so confused and overwhelmed, but I wish you could be here." Veronica read the message in her living room alone. Tears welled up. She felt a pang of sadness. A baby girl. Did Angela name her? Did Edward hold the child in his arms? She almost responded, but found no words. She placed her phone face down and sobbed. Within a week, Angela and the newborn named Isabel returned to the Bel Air estate that Edward had once shared with Angela. Edward was spotted coming and going, though rumor had it he was staying in a guest house on the property. Friedman and Parker arranged a press release announcing that Edward and Angela were working on an amicable custody arrangement. Some tabloids speculated that Edward would soon patch things up with his real wife, leaving Veronica in the dust. Others insisted Edward was waiting to finalize the divorce so he could run back to Veronica. Weeks later, Edward showed up unannounced at Veronica's condo. He looked haggard, wearing casual clothes, for once the circles under his eyes etched deeply. Veronica opened the door, startled, but let him in. He stood in her living room, glancing around at the modest decorations, the scattered boxes of items she'd retrieved from his mansion. "I miss you," he said softly. "I know that sounds crazy, given everything, but I had to see you." Veronica crossed her arms. "Congratulations on the baby," he grimaced, sinking onto her couch. "She's beautiful. I've been staying in a guest house dealing with lawyers every day. Angela wants a huge chunk of my company. The board is furious. They say if I don't resolve this soon, they'll force me out. He exhaled shakily. "I'm drowning Veronica." She felt a sting of sympathy, but also anger. "That's what happens when you lie and manipulate everyone. I told you from the start I wouldn't play second fiddle." He nodded. "I know, which is why I'm here with a proposal. I want to finalize the divorce immediately. I told Angela I'll sign over half my shares to her if that's what it takes. I don't care about the money anymore. I just want her to move on so I can be with you properly without hiding or hurting anyone." Her heart skipped. "You'll give her half your shares. That's your company. That's everything." A slow nod. "I'd do anything to be free of this. If she wants half, so be it. But Friedman and Parker tells me it may take a few more months to iron out all the details. In the meantime, I want you back in my life. I need you. Will you wait just a bit longer until it's done?" Veronica stared at him for a long time. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the dream wedding fiasco, all swirled in her mind. "Why should I believe you this time?" she whispered. He knelt down in front of her, taking her hands. "Because I have nothing left to hide. Everyone knows about Angela and the baby now. There's no reason for me to lie. If you want a quiet life, I'll retire from the company. We'll move somewhere else. Just don't leave me." Tears welled up in her eyes. She recalled Angela's warning, "He always wants it all." Yet she also saw the desperation in Edward's face, the sincerity in his trembling voice. She realized she did still love him, despite everything. I don't know." He gently kissed her hands. "Think about it. Please." The days after Edward's visit stretched endlessly for Veronica. Her condo, once a place of healing, now felt like a prison of indecision. Every room held reminders of him. Her vanity still held the perfume he bought her in Paris, and the champagne flutes from their Amalfi trip sat untouched in a cupboard. She had deleted and reinstalled his number 3 times in one afternoon. Edward had asked her to wait. He claimed he was ready to give it all up, his company, his pride, even his public image, just to have her in his life again. The diamond ring he offered still sparkled on her coffee table like a beacon and a threat. Could she say yes again after everything? Veronica sought advice where she could. Her lawyer, Christopher Jenkins, was firm. Men like Edward don't change overnight. Emotion aside, you need to protect yourself. If he truly means to put you first, he should prove it on paper, not just in pretty words. Her mother was even more blunt. "You saw who he was in front of the entire city. That man humiliated you, lied to you, dragged you into a scandal so big it landed in national headlines. And now he wants a do-over. Men like Edward always want to rewrite history." But Veronica wasn't so sure it was that simple. On a quiet evening, she visited Edward at a discreet penthouse he had rented while the estate settlement unfolded. She arrived without calling ahead. Part of her wanted to see the truth unfiltered, no rehearsal, no grand gestures. He opened the door surprised, but not unprepared. The apartment was stripped of luxury, only the basics remained: a couch, a few books, a bottle of scotch on the counter. For once, he didn't look like the mogul of Rothman Medical Sciences. He looked like a man who'd lost everything, but still hoped to gain something back. They talked for hours on the balcony. No lawyers, no PR reps, no pretenses. Just the two of them staring out at the skyline that had once been the backdrop to their fairy tale. Edward opened up like never before. When Angela showed up at the wedding, I thought I could still salvage both worlds. But that's the problem. I wanted both, and that cost me everything. The company, the respect of my peers, and worst of all, you. Veronica listened in silence, her heart aching. I've signed away control of the business. I've given Angela what she asked for. I'm not fighting anymore, because I want peace. And if I can have that with you, even just a shot at it, I'll take that over any boardroom or billion-dollar deal. Tears welled up in Veronica's eyes. Do you really think we can go back? After everything, Edward shook his head slowly. Not back, but maybe forward, somewhere new, just us. She didn't answer that night, but when she left, she didn't feel the same bitterness that had once wrapped around her like armor. Something had shifted. In the weeks that followed, the legal process crept forward. The tabloids speculated endlessly. Some claimed Veronica had left LA. Others claimed she was secretly pregnant. But she ignored them all. This time, she wasn't letting the world decide her next move. She was deciding for herself. 6 months had passed since the disastrous wedding. Now all eyes turned to the grand marble halls of the Los Angeles Superior Court. It was no ballroom, but the stakes were far higher. Inside the courtroom, Edward sat flanked by his elite legal team from Friedman and Parker. His once confident demeanor had been replaced with the look of a man weathered by scandal and sleepless nights. Across the aisle, Angela Rothman arrived with quiet command, baby Isabel in her arms, and her legal team trailing behind her. Her father, steely-eyed and silent, took a front-row seat. Veronica entered unnoticed, dressed plainly, sunglasses tucked into her bag. She had no official role in the proceedings, no documents to sign, no declarations to make, but she needed to see it with her own eyes, to know if Edward would finally do what he promised. The air in the courtroom crackled with tension. Lawyers tossed around terms like custody arrangements, equitable division, and stock dilution. But the real battle was less about legalese and more about power and the shattered remnants of trust. Angela's demands were bold half of Edward's stake in Rothman Medical Sciences' control of the Children's Trust, the Bel Air estate, and full legal custody of baby Isabel with visitation rights for Edward. Her lawyers cited past deceit, emotional manipulation, and the need for stability. Edward's team countered with financial charts, private negotiations, and carefully worded statements about co-parenting potential and legacy protection. But Edward remained mostly silent, absorbing each accusation with a clenched jaw. Midway through the session, the judge called for private mediation in chambers. The room emptied, except for court staff and a few spectators. Veronica remained seated, her heart pounding. For nearly 2 hours, nothing moved. Then finally the doors opened. Edward stepped out first, his face unreadable. Angela followed with baby Isabel asleep in her arms. For a moment, their eyes met across the hallway, two people bound by history, broken by ambition. A Friedman and Parker associate made the announcement, a preliminary settlement has been reached. Final documents will be submitted for judicial approval within 2 weeks. Angela said nothing, but her expression softened, almost as if the war inside her had finally burned itself out. She turned and walked away, her father guiding her toward the exit. Edward scanned the room. When his gaze landed on Veronica, a flicker of something, relief, maybe hope, passed through his eyes. He gave her a small nod. It wasn't grand, it wasn't public, but it was real. And for Veronica, it was enough for now. 2 weeks after the final gavel dropped in court, officially severing Edward and Angela's tumultuous marriage, Veronica stood alone on her balcony overlooking the city lights. A soft breeze swept through her silk robe, but the chill in her chest had nothing to do with the wind. Edward had called that morning. The divorce was final. Angela had returned to Switzerland with her children. The house was quiet now, the storm seemingly over. And yet the silence didn't bring peace. Edward had lost a staggering portion of his fortune. He was no longer the indomitable CEO of Rothman Medical Sciences, but a stripped-down figurehead with a tarnished image. Friedman and Parker's press team painted the settlement as fair and mature. In reality, it left him diminished financially, socially, reputationally. He came to Veronica that same evening. No chauffeur, no entourage. Just Edward standing at her door like a man who had been reduced to his most human form. In his hand, he held the velvet box. "I know you have every reason to walk away," he said, his voice steady but soft. "But I'm asking, please don't." Veronica let him in. The air was thick with history, regret, and unspoken wounds. They sat across from one another, the 6-carat ring, gleaming between them on the coffee table, like a question that demanded an answer. "I've signed everything," Edward said. "Angela got the shares, the estate in Geneva, even full control of the Triplets trust. I didn't fight her. I gave her what she wanted so I could stop fighting and start living honestly." Veronica studied him. The once pristine, immaculately groomed tycoon now looked worn, but not defeated. There was vulnerability in his gaze she hadn't seen before, not at the wedding, not even in the courtroom. "You lost nearly everything," she murmured. "I kept the only thing that matters," he replied, reaching for her hand. "My truth. And you, if you'll have me." He knelt then, not in grand showmanship, but in raw sincerity. "Veronica Castle," he said quietly, "marry me. For real. No cameras, no lies, no shadows." Veronica's throat tightened. She had every reason to say no. Her heart still bore scars from that day, the sound of the ballroom doors crashing open, the courtroom spectacle, the whispers that followed her through Beverly Hills like ghosts. But beneath all that pain, there was still love. "Edward," she whispered, "I need to know this isn't another illusion. I need to know I'll never come second again to your career, your secrets, or anyone else." He pressed her hand against his chest. "You'll be first. From now on, you'll always be first." The quiet stretched between them. Veronica looked down at the ring, then slowly slid it onto her finger. It fit just as it had before, but this time it meant something different. Not perfection, but possibility. "I'm not saying yes forever," she said. "I'm saying yes to see if we can get it right." Edward exhaled a shaky breath, eyes brimming. "That's more than I hoped for." 3 months later, they held a small private ceremony in Santa Barbara, away from paparazzi. No flamboyant ballrooms, no throngs of corporate giants, just close friends, her mother, and a single Friedman and Parker attorney to witness the legal side. Veronica wore an ivory sheath dress, simpler this time, but beautiful in its own right. Edward wore a navy suit. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. The moment was surreal, tinged with relief and cautious hope. For the rest of the world, the headlines had moved on to new scandals. Edward was no longer the unstoppable tycoon. He was a diminished figure in the corporate sphere. But for Veronica, perhaps that was a blessing. She didn't need the high-stakes glitz that had once entranced her. She craved stability, love, and a husband who wouldn't hide behind secrets. Only time would tell if Edward had truly changed. But as they kissed under the California sun, she let herself believe, for now, in second chances. After all the chaos, the shock entrance of a pregnant wife, the children no one knew existed, and a team of unstoppable lawyers, it seems, our star-crossed lovers found a path to redemption. But did Veronica make the right choice? Only time will reveal if Edward's promises will stand firm or crumble under life's next challenges. Nevertheless, their turbulent journey reminds us that love, trust, and second chances can emerge in the unlikeliest of circumstances. And now it's your turn to weigh in on this roller coaster of drama. Did Veronica's hope triumph over reason? Would you have forgiven Edward? Join the conversation. If you have enjoyed this gripping real-life style novel full of twists and betrayals, please hit that like button, share the story with friends who love some juicy drama, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable tales. Your support keeps the stories coming. Thanks for being part of this journey.